All right, thanks, Joey. Well, time now for a check of our top stories. And now in its third week, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is intensifying. Along with accusations of war crimes, top diplomats failed to make any breakthroughs with peace talks. Meanwhile, the human toll grows, both in civilian deaths and those forced to flee their homeland. Bree Jackson has the latest for us from Washington.
Russian troops closing in on Kyiv. U.S. defense officials say forces could encircle the city in just 1 to 2 weeks.
To monitor the situation.
One of America's top diplomats is among those accusing Russia of war crimes.
They constitute war crimes. They are attacks on civilians that cannot be justified by any in any way whatsoever.
While in Poland, Vice President Harris backed calls for an investigation.
Absolutely, there should be an investigation. And we should all be watching.
The trip follows a disconnect over Poland's plan to send fighter jets to Ukraine, something top Republicans are still demanding.
Enough talk. People are dying. Send them the planes that they need.
Now is very bad.
Speaking from his office Thursday, President Volodymyr Zelensky also denied Russia's claims that Ukraine is preparing to fight back using chemical weapons. On Capitol Hill, U.S. intelligence officials warned Russia may launch false accusations to lay the groundwork for a cover-up.
This is a classic move by the Russians.
President Biden says cutting off Russian oil into the U.S. is only part of the fight against Putin's war.
He's now facing a more united, energized, resolute NATO in the West than he ever imagined.
The White House plans to announce more punishments against Russia today. In Washington, Bree Jackson for NBC News.
And meantime, in Puerto Rico, roughly 150 Puerto Rican soldiers have traveled to Poland on Friday to support NATO as the conflict in Ukraine continues. And today, our Francis Felix reports on exactly what those troops will be doing.
The U.S. Army Reserve in Puerto Rico mobilized 150 soldiers from the Unit 432 to Poland. But what type of work the soldiers do? What type of equipment they use? We talk with soldiers from the sister unit 268 that tell us more about their daily job. The 432 Transportation Company from the U.S. Army Reserve Puerto Rico were activated to deploy to Poland to provide support to NATO. The U.S. Army Reserve in Puerto Rico has thousands of citizen soldiers with highly technical, specialized, and professional skills in logistics, transportation, training, engineering, information technology, communication, networking, and law enforcement, among others. What is the name of this type of transportation?
This is a helmet. It's M1120 helmet with an LHS system. It's an adaptation of the M970 helmet. The only thing that changed is the capabilities that you have to load and unload different types of cargo.
The maximum capacity depends on the symmetry of the equipment that you're loading. It could be up to 50,000 pounds or 80,000 pounds.
Usually what type of equipment?
Usually this system that we have right here, for example, this one that we got for showing you guys, it usually we used to carry Humvees or other different type of military equipment. Also, it can carry different type of pallets equipment like ammunition, food supplies, and if we take off the track to down, we can carry up containers that can have any type of equipment inside of them.
Agent Velasquez explained us that these soldiers had planned to move to Poland and been preparing from a year ago, moving all the equipment and the unit.
Basically, the 432nd Transportation Company, they will support the mission in Poland and supporting the NATO forces by providing transportation support and moving cargo from point A to point B. From the U.S. Army Reserve in Puerto Rico, we have over 300 soldiers on ground in Poland at this point.
How many months will take this mission?
Basically, deployments take from 9 to 12 months. It depends on the mission.
Sergeant Josue Gomez Negron is a special education teacher assigned to the 268 Transportation Company. He is native from Aguas Buenas, and he has 8 years of military experience performing as cargo specialist and motor transportation operator.
It feels great for me, and I love the fact that I can apply the studies that I have in my civilian life to my military life. For example, teaching the new soldiers how to operate these vehicles and keeping up the tradition of training the units to have certified personnel that can mobilize at any time, at any place around the world.
U.S. Army Reserve celebrates 100 years of established, supporting the nation at any place and at any moment, and being participating in every military operation around the world. From Fort Buchanan, Puerto Rico, Frances Felix.
All right, thanks so much, Francis. In the meantime, those rising fuel costs that we talked about earlier this week here on One Caribbean News have now caused some drivers to reevaluate their car choices. Dealerships in New York say demand for fuel-efficient vehicles is now on the rise. Chase Hull has this next report.
Pain at the pump has many people looking for relief.
Every vehicle that we've had that's been a hybrid or all electric has sold.
Kevin Parker, a managing partner of Garber Automotive, says people asking for a hybrid or electric vehicle has gone up 30 or 40%. He says gas prices have made it nearly impossible for people to get their hands on a fuel-saver vehicle.
Most of the vehicles coming in are already spoken for, but should we have one that somehow slipped through the cracks and it's a hybrid, people are snatching it up left and right. When a truckload comes in, if there's 10 cars on them, 8 or 9 of them are already sold.
Others are ditching their trucks and sedans entirely, looking to cut their gas prices even more.
A lot of people are looking for smaller bikes to take around, to be right around locally around town. And then some of the bigger bikes they're also buying for road trips that they normally would take in their cars or their trucks.
McDaniel says it takes anywhere from $20 to $26 to fill up a motorcycle tank, cutting some people's gas costs in half.
The trends we've seen over the last 6 weeks with the bikes we sold last month and how busy we've been currently this month, we've seen it's about a 40% increase. So it's significant right now.
And for the 5th consecutive year, the Jamaican government will not impose any new taxes on its residents. In fact, the finance minister there says government will be providing some relief for consumers' aid and for families in need, opening the 2022-2023 budget debate in the House of Representatives. He said the state will establish a special $2 billion fund to ease the impact of rising fuel prices on the vulnerable. The measure, which will be implemented in the first quarter of the upcoming fiscal year, will support people who are unable to pay high gas and energy prices.
We'll come back on the details in terms of allocation because we want to discuss with stakeholders, get other people's views of how we should allocate it. But I can easily see some of it being used to provide some relief to taxi operators who have fixed fares, and some being used for children on path who have transportation costs and so forth.
Now, the finance minister also said support for the most vulnerable will be prioritized through a $200 million allocation to families who are not on the program of advancement through health and education. Qualified families will receive a one-off grant to assist with food expenses. Clark said that over the next 3 weeks, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security will partner with organizations like the Jamaican Red Cross to identify people in need. And in April, government will distribute $250 million worth of care packages to the most vulnerable.
We have made provisions to be in a position to follow up with another $250 million later in the year, depending on how the situation evolves.